In Search of Knowledge, Past, Present, and Future is a series of unique programs that are designed to show our history as a living history rather than just a list of names and facts about people in the past. It is a Black history lesson, a vocational tool to interest people in various occupations, and a mini museum containing books, artifacts, and photos of notable Blacks bringing an original art exhibit directly to the classroom. In Search of Knowledge is celebrating its third year, and for this anniversary episode, I decided to focus on how my guests shared how they use science, technology, engineering, art, and math, commonly known as STEAM, in their various careers and their life skills. I believe it's important to get our youth actively involved in STEAM. We know that our children may get bored in school going over and over information, but what they may not realize is that they are learning information they can use in any career. I wanted to show the wide variety of ways my guests use STEAM in their careers on a daily basis. I also asked my guests to share what life skills they used to become successful. Their answers varied. Communication skills, conflict management, the ability to get along with others, and compassion were some of the topics they gave. I believe you will find their answers insightful, and if you would like to see their full interviews, you can see them on PhillyCam's website. So sit back, relax, and help me celebrate 3 years of In Search of Knowledge. A question that I try to ask all my guests, and you've already started hitting on it. I always ask our guests about STEAM. I've added art to it now. It's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Because we're finding that as our children get to about third grade, especially the girls, they're brilliant until that time, and something happens and they start pulling away from the science, the technology, and all of that. So what's the biggest problem that you face that you use science, technology, engineering, art, or math? Because you talked about math in the garden. So what do you use it for exactly?
Well, okay, math-wise, you determine exactly how many feet you're working with.
Okay.
You got to start out with what you're working with, and then you got to start out with what you want to plant, and then where are you going to plant it, and you just.
So you have to measure.
I'm still even learning all that because I don't do a lot of that fine tuning math and all of that. A lot of what I do is organic.
But it also gets mixed. You can't really separate the science from the math when you're measuring for your garden. You can't separate all of that when you're trying to do those things. So sometimes it's not clear cut, the STEAM, but you know that it's all combined within there. So what you're actually talking about are life skills. Now I usually talk about life skills being communication skills and conflict management, but you're bringing out some others. You also talk about organizing. So what's the most important life skill that you use?
Life skill. Okay. Most important life skill is understanding that this is hard work.
Okay.
You got to get up early in the morning. You got to make sure these plants are watered. I mean, I'm never unhappy about the rain because that'll save me a day where I don't have to come out here and water. But there's certain disciplines you're going to get bit by bugs. There are going to be sometimes things that you're growing that's not going to make it. But when fighting with the bugs, you're always, never-ending fight with the insects.
So you're also talking about learning to accept defeat. If the vegetables or whatever it is that you plant, it doesn't come up.
Right, learn from that. Learn from it and adjust to it so the next time you'll know what to do.
And one of the things that I know that you had, and we're going to take a look at it if you allow us, is the technology part of that STEM. You now have GPS. How long have you been using GPS? And GPS is the system that allows you to find maps.
Well, I've been using GPS for over 25 years. And because when I had the other book, I had a smaller GPS. But the ones I got on this book have more technology with them and all.
And what do you use it for besides navigating?
We use it for marking all our fishing areas and all. In other words, when you find a good fishing spot, and you take your GPS and you punch that number in. And then when you want to go back to that number, you tell your GPS to carry you back. I don't care if it's 100 miles away.
And that number is the latitude and longitude?
Right.
Okay. So you have to know math in order to
You
be a
have
captain.
to know the math.
Okay.
Most boats that have like a VHF radio, which would be this.
Okay.
This is what called the Coast Guard. It got in trouble. This for the listen for the weather. All this is called a VHF. I have two of them. In case
Okay.
one go bad. This is a radar. This is where if it's foggy and you out there or at night, you can see any boats around you. You can look at them. Or the little dots on your radar.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this is one fish finder that I have.
And that's where you were telling us that the fish are on the
Yes,
bottom
this
and you can
is-
see
right.
them.
And this is another fish. So I have two fish finders too.
Okay.
And then this is a GPS, which I have over 1,200 fishing spots in this one.
Wow.
And this is another one, which I have 200 and some fishing
Do,
spots.
do you
in
share
this.
your spots with your son?
Most, yes, but most people, when they see you fishing somewhere and they see you pulling them, they'll ride by and punch it. You
Punch
can
the
ride
number
right
in?
by a boat and punch it in.
So that's why I see the boats going by, almost following you sometimes.
Yeah, sometime, but
Okay.
even the next day, if they get out before you, they can be sitting on that same good spot because they rode by you and punched it in. So
we talked about careers, and I know I'm an avid movie fan, and I love to watch the titles, and now they're starting to put up these signs that say 13,000 jobs went into making this film. So you talked a little bit about some of the things that they do, that they could do with audio and music and all of those other things. We also talk about STEAM. I've changed it. It used to be STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. We've added art, because someone I interviewed who has an art center said we got to put arts back there. So now we call it STEAM.
STEAM, okay.
Science, technology, engineering, and math. How important is all of that to what you do?
Oh wow, it all is. It all is. First of all, audio engineering is a science.
Okay.
It's not rocket science, but it's definitely a science. It
Okay.
deals with the physics of sound. It's our entire career path is learning how to harness and deal with sound under any type of condition.
So you use STEAM on a regular basis then?
Yeah, particularly like I say on the science, the art, this is as much art as anything else. Math is often involved, even with music, there's a lot of formulas dealing with that. All of those are involved with music and audio engineering.
And I want kids to know that, because while they're sitting in school getting bored, what they think are lessons that they'll never use again, in a lot of ways they're going to use that over and over, because you just mentioned formulas. So were there formulas, or at least the thought process of how to deal with the formulas, did that help you to become a better engineer?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And does being a musician help you to record musicians better?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. You know what's interesting, as I started to study music, because like I said, I was really in my 20s, mid to late 20s, when I really got serious about understanding notes and theory and those types of things.
Okay.
As I would spend more time practicing and more time practicing, I started to find that I was able to study more different types of industries. So I started studying web design, and I started studying, different videography, different industries that would help me in my company, so that I could have pretty much be self-sufficient. And I was able to do it. And even though I wasn't in college anymore, wasn't in school anymore, I was able to think academically still, even as I got older.
Also trying to do with this program is get kids to understand, and adults, that you have to be able to get along with others.
That's right.
That all of this stuff they see on reality TV about everybody fighting is not where you're really going to exist. You're going to exist with those relationships. You mentioned that you had friends. Do you still have connection with them in their businesses, with their recording industry, or with whatever they're doing with the recording? Do you still have contact with those individuals?
I try to. One thing about building a career of any kind that I learned, I wish I learned earlier, but I did learn eventually, is if you're going to be in an industry and you feel you're passionate about it, you have to find ways to network within that industry.
Okay.
You should get around and get around like-minded people. You should go to conferences and conventions that deal with your industry. And yes, along that way, you're going to, have an opportunity to sit down and talk to people. That impression you leave is important. people don't remember what you say to them, but they remember how you make them feel.
Yes.
So, sometimes things don't go well, and I'm guilty of this too.
I think we
Things
all
don't
are.
go well, there's a little bit of
We all are.
friction, and you might say something or give a certain type of attitude, which might even burn a bridge, which you never should do. But at the end of the day, you've got to try to find a way to get along. You're going to agree to disagree sometimes.
Right.
But two things: network within your field, but then keep those relationships.
One of the things that we've talked about is life skills, so we've talked about some of those. What other life skills do you try to impart to the students? I talked about analytical thinking, we talked about critical thinking and all of that. What other skills do you try to give the kids?
Survival. Just being able to respect others, understand, how your money works, being able to speak with others,
Okay,
and being their first job opportunity usually,
okay,
because we do people. The students can get jobs here through the Summer Work Ready Philadelphia Youth Network program.
okay.
And so we're usually their first job opportunity too, and so that allows us to have an impact on their work ethic, and simple things like signing in and signing out, and being able to use your alphabet.
Okay, when you're
filing, and things that we took for granted now
Yes,
are things that we need to make sure that they continue to know.
and that's why it's so important that the village is working to do this, because I always ask my guests about STEAM. I've had to put an A in it.
Okay. Yes,
Science,
put that A in there.
technology, engineering, and math.
Mhm.
So we've talked a lot about the art. How do you use the other three in your daily life? The science, technology, maybe engineering, and the math. How do you use those here?
Math is always very important to theater in terms of music, in terms of dance, and being able to add, subtract, multiply, and understand concepts of putting something together. Math is very important in that way.
One of the things you mentioned was communication skills, and I'm glad you talked about that, because I always try to talk about life skills. I call those things that help you get better in life, which is what we're talking about. So communication or conflict management or problem solving. What are some of your most important life skills that you use all the time?
Listening. I think listening is one of the life skills that I use every day, and compassion.
Okay.
Because everybody who comes to see me has their own story.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things you must allow people to do is to present their story and allow them to feel as if they're center stage at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Then and only then should you then put your understanding into that, so that you might mold things in a different direction.
And that's a big change for doctors, because doctors are so used to just whipping people through the office, and now even in medical schools, they're teaching their students how to listen to the patient, because the more you listen to the patient, the more you may find out about what's going on.
And letting them patients be a part of the whole care process. Because when you get a person involved in their own care, then they I think, understand what's going on with the disease process. One of the things I love to do when people come in is be able to show them, how something works, or explain to them what this means, because when you do that, they become participants in the process.
So how do you use science, technology, engineering, art, or math in your everyday life?
Well, with the science part of it, they understand about how the rope turns, and the fact that how to get into the rope is part of science.
That's going to be the hard part for me. I'm telling you now, getting in them ropes. I usually like to stand right in the middle and let you start turning, but we'll see if we can get through this part.
The science, technology, and the math part is about getting in the rope.
Okay.
When that rope goes up,
Mm-hmm.
then it's clear for you to jump in,
Okay.
okay? And then another part of the math part is when they're timed, and how many times that left foot hits that ground.
Oh, so it's the left foot that they count.
Their left foot is what they count.
Okay. But what I'm hearing over and over and over again is that ability to get along with others, which you're trying to instill in your girls.
Yes, and trust me, it's not easy. Trust me.
Mhm.
It is truly not easy because even with me playing sports as long as I have, it is not always easy, you know, for them to learn how to work together. They have their little, I listen to them sometimes, I just let them work it out. You know, they little arguments, well, I told you, and you didn't listen, and now look at what you're doing. And sometimes I just stand back and I let them work it out.
Okay.
And 9 times out of 10, they do work it out.
Yeah.
They do work it out because there's that one little girl that will step and say, let me show you.
Yes.
And she'll show them. And then they'll be like, oh.
So one of the things I try to ask all of my guests is about STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art,
Right.
and math.
Right.
And you've already talked about the math.
Right.
Tell me a little bit more about how you incorporate that technology and even the math on a daily
well,
basis.
science is like printmaking in many aspects of it. It's about a resist. It's about oil and water. You know, things that absorb water and things that repel water. The chemicals, if you're doing an etching, oxidation. So there's some chemistry there. The technology, you know, one of the first, you know, we think about the Industrial Revolution, but it goes back to the Gutenberg press.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the first real piece of equipment to do anything was in the 16th century with the invention of the Gutenberg printing press. And printing, as it moved forward, relied upon the interchangeability of parts and the coupling of parts together. So this relationship, often built on the male component and the female component, coupling together to combine and hold together these parts, movable parts. A lot of that started with the Gutenberg press. Right.
So what are you doing to try to give students another perspective, a broader perspective of art?
Just create opportunities for them to be exposed to successful artists, young emerging artists, their passion, their commitment, the sacrifices that they're willing to make, and understand that there's other options out there. You don't, the whole idea of being a poor, struggling artist, don't get it.
No.
You know, don't get it with a lot of people. You
Sure.
know, who wants to intentionally struggle in a profession?
So given all of these people that you grew up with, what life skills did you learn from them that became important for you to be the successful person you are?
Leadership, and I think also honesty and the ability to bring people into the fold. And by that I mean, so often we think when we arrive at a certain level, you know, we are the kings. And I have more people say to me, well, Miss Michael, you're a famous people, but you don't act like it. You act like you're one of us. Well, I am one of them. You know, I remember when my firm wanted me to move to the suburbs, and I insisted on staying right here in Southwest Philadelphia. Well, that's who I am.
Okay.
And that's where I wanted to live. And my neighbors are the people that I wanted to be with.
The other thing that I always try to do with this show too is talk about STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
Right.
How do they impact you on a daily basis?
Well, one of the things that I do is when I go out to the schools, I even start with the first graders. And I'm talking about boxing, but yet I'm talking about those subjects. Because if you think about it, I said to one first grade class, we were talking about how the boxers have to have medical attention. And so I brought in, they have to have medical attention and they have to get tests. They have to get tests for HIV. Now here's one of the most crucial health issues in our community. And I said to the class, how many of you know what that is and how many of you know anybody who has HIV and AIDS? And I think only one child's hand did not go up. So you have an opportunity to talk about that. We have a number of young people that we work with
around getting into the science area, getting to engineering, because these are the subject matters that are important for tomorrow.
Yes.
And yet, if we don't begin to talk to them at a young age, we will not be ready.
Yes.
They will not be ready. We as a people will be left out of the workforce. And so all of those subject matters, engineering and science and math, we're working on. Now, I had some high school students who were sent to me at the Blue Horizon. Well, Miss Michael, they can't read and they can't write. Well, they could. But, you know, everybody doesn't learn the same way.
Yes.
And so, you know, I had to start with what I had. Now, in terms of math, how do you deal with a person who can't add? I had 668 chairs that I had to have set up for a boxing
Oh,
event.
here we go with fractions.
Oh, yes, yes. So you use that.
So it's a wonderful thing just to see that change.
One of the things that I try to ask all of my guests is about STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. We've included art in that. How has STEAM helped you in your career?
Well, it helps you diagnose, okay? As far as feelings, you have to have your sciences. You have to have a good science base. Okay, so that's your foundation. And then you bring in what you bring to the situation and all that compassion and that caring. You have to have all of that when you're working with people. And a lot of people don't see that part. You see the doctor, you see that. But you have to have compassion. Everybody doesn't have it, but you really should have compassion.
You've talked about compassion, and I got a feeling you have a few others up your sleeve. What life skills have helped you succeed in your field?
The main thing is a strong sense of self. All right, you have to have that. If you don't have it, you better fake it. You can't let anybody put their foot on you, because in this world, you have all kinds of people you have to come in contact with, and don't think that because a person's educated, they don't have biases. Don't think you're not going to be faced with racism because a person's educated, because I found some of the most educated people have the most uneducated thoughts about people, you know, and because you might see a doctor or a nurse, they're human beings like everybody else, and we have to realize that too. But they do come with a lot of baggage, just like we go with a lot of baggage. But to see people, and you see it almost on a daily basis, I call them little digs, those little racist digs all day long.
Yeah.
You know, and some people don't even know they're doing it, and sometimes it's blatant.
Okay.
You can't fight every battle on the job because you'd be crazy.
And that's important.
You know, and some days you say, well, I'll let that fly off because I'm not going to change a person. But those times that you can speak up, you do have to take a stand.
Okay. Now, so how do you describe, how has technology helped you make those transitions over all these years?
You know, it's helping me more now than it did in the beginning because I was a purist. I wanted to paint like Rembrandt, and I wanted to know how paint was made, and you know, you want to relish the smell of the oil and the turpentine. That was what turned me on. You know, the whole environment of the arts. But for today, technology helps you more than the routine old school way of doing things in so many ways, because it's so at your fingertips to manipulate images and do what you want to do with them. But that doesn't make everybody an artist. It makes them a manipulator of the machine that does the work. But the inspiration still has to come from the soul of the artist, of the creator.
One of the things that I'm noticing is that children don't color like they used to do. Do you think that even with this technology, they need to get back to those crayons?
Well, if not crayons, they need to experiment with everything. Anything that gives you something when you touch it and put it to some other surface is qualified for a medium to work with. We work on metal, we work on wood, we work on glass, work on fabric. People pick up a chunk of the sidewalk and work on that, and that's, I mean, I'm serious. You know, that's about contemporary art forms come in so many ways that people interpret their own validity. It becomes valid because there are young artists now who create their own sense of values for what they accept as a part of their communicating skills.
Okay.
And if you can create a new language that people around you understand, it becomes a language.
So, how did you move into fashion?
Drawing, just being able to, when you can draw, here's the point. Art and visual art is based on somebody making an impression on something that other people can experience. So fashion has to do with drawing the form, because people have to wear it. So the more you draw, the more efficient you become at controlling what you want to put down on paper. So drawing was the most important part. It's like, if you want to be a weightlifter, you better do some push-ups. And that's the part of the physical part is one thing, but the training your eye and your hand to work together, even to the point where you don't have to look at the paper. If I'm looking at Tony and I have paper here and I can control my hand with my eyes, then I'm becoming a machine that can do what I see with this instrument, and that's what the technique is about. So from drawing, you can become an architect, you can become an engineer, you can become anything you want to do, but it's the coordination.
One of the things that I try to talk to my guests about, because I think it's important for youth to understand, is the ability to get along with others. Now, I know you said it's a one-on-one tournament, but they're also working as teams. So what's the lesson that you try to impart to them about being able to get along with others?
Oh, my tournaments is one-on-one. The kids play with partners.
Okay.
So, first of all, you have to find somebody that you're compatible with from the door. I want you to be compatible with your partner coming into the club, so that therefore that can knock the rough edges off of what's going to happen when this is a bossy person and this is and you know how I get. So once I let them know, once I find out who their teammate is, then they have to work together as a team.
And how do you get the other teams to interact with each other?
Other teams outside of
No, in other words, you've got people paired in your club.
Right.
So now you've got a group of 18 kids in the
Right.
room. How do you make sure that they all get along with each other?
Mr. Green don't take no stuff in the Scrabble club. And you have to, because this is about Scrabble once you come through that door.
And it's important that kids understand, and parents, that discipline is an important part of your child's life. And so you're saying, I don't take no stuff. Once they cross that door, they know. That's how this is going to be run.
And that's how it's going to be run. Yes, ma'am.
If we can gather to march 1 million strong, then why can't we gather in small groups to resolve one small problem in our own lives? If we can spend millions of dollars on anything and everything, then why can't we put money aside as individuals or a group to accomplish one small financial goal? If we can put aside our differences and speak to each other without anger or calling each other out of our names, and give love and respect to each other for a few hours while marching, then why can't we come together for a week to work on solving one small problem? When we recognize that we have to begin the most important undertaking in our history of saving ourselves, our children, and our communities, that in order to survive in the 21st century, we have to focus our time and energy on loving ourselves for ourselves, then we are marching more than 1 million strong.